You guys know from being here, I mean, going into 2022, nobody thought that Nicky Mamori and DQ Smith were going to be starting safeties because we had two seniors that they were behind, and we got into week 2 and they became starters, so it's the same thing. We don't all of a sudden name someone, Debo Williams, as our starting linebacker coming out of spring practice, but he needs to have a great summer to continue to be the starting linebacker. So that's where we are. And I had those conversations with those guys the Monday after the spring game.
And Beamer's 100% right, because every headline coming out of last night was Beamer names Lenore Sellers as starting quarterback. And it's news from the standpoint of this is the first time we've really officially heard him say it that way, that he is the starter coming out of spring. Now, that does, leave things open-ended that could possibly change. But where we stand as of right now, Lenore Sellers is the starting quarterback. And I think if you poll most people, even people within the media, I don't think anybody's expected or is expecting that to change between now and when the season starts. Now, again, once we get and actually start playing football, if Lenore Sellers goes out there and is terrible and, is throwing interceptions every other pass and can't run past the line of scrimmage, then yes, a change will be made. But leading up into the season, we're all expecting Lenore Sellers to be the starting quarterback. So it's news from that standpoint that it's also been formally announced, if you want to say formally announced, but also it's not news from the standpoint of this is exactly what we expected. Lenore Sellers, before anybody was brought in from the transfer portal, and outside of like a KJ Jefferson, if he would have come here transferring from Arkansas or something along those lines, where you have a bona fide multi-year starter at a Power 5 institution, or an SEC school or something along those lines coming in here, we all assumed it was going to be Lenore Sellers' job. And Coach Beamer, with the talent that he brought in from the transfer portal, guys that have been around college football in Davis Bevel and Robbie Ashford, but none of those guys that you definitively looked at and said, yeah, that guy's definitely going to be the starter when the fall comes around. Everybody has their chance to compete, obviously, and that's why those guys came here with the opportunity to compete for that starting spot, and Beamer was going to give everybody a fair shake. But I don't think we looked at any of those guys, or even, Dante Reno coming in as a true freshman and said definitively, oh, that guy, could, unseat Lenore Sellers as being the starting quarterback for, the 2024 season. Sellers got the first snap of spring, whether that be ceremonial or what have you, and has seemingly held on to the starting job since then. Because I think when you look at what we saw in the spring game, and again, the spring game's not the end-all be-all, but also every report that we had coming out of spring practice when media was able to look at what the coaches said about their respective quarterbacks going through practice, there was nothing there that suggested that Sellers was losing grip on the starting job. There was nothing there that said, ooh, Robbie Ashford's gaining on him. Ooh, Robbie Ashford's, has a chance to steal it here. Like there was no indication of that. And were there days, I'm sure, where Robbie Ashford maybe looked a little bit better in practice? Maybe. But those days certainly probably didn't outweigh the ones where Sellers looked the best, if at all, if there were any of those days at all. So, again, this is kind of the expected outcome. And when you talk about Ashford specifically, and we've talked about this plenty as spring went along. And yes, he does have starting experience in the SEC from his time at Auburn, been at Oregon as well. He also lost his job at Auburn and was the backup to Peyton Thorne this past season, who was obviously not very good for the Auburn Tigers. So we knew with Ashford coming in, he was going to have to be leaps and bounds better than Lenore Sellers to win the job, more likely than not, because Sellers already has a year in this program, a year with Dow Loggins as the offensive coordinator, has already, been ingrained in the offense. Now, yes, the offense is going to change a bit from a season ago because Lenore Sellers brings a different skill set to the table than what Spencer Rattler did, but those wheels are already turning with Dow Loggins looking ahead to the future, a season ago when Sellers was, coming in garbage time and all that kind of stuff. The plans are already being put in place for him to end up being the guy. So, again, it was going to take something significant to change that. Now, and again, Beamer leaves it open-ended. He said it's still a competition. There's still an opportunity for, one of these guys to step up and take the job from Sellers over the course of summer, over the course of fall camp, whatever it may be. So he's not definitively saying, yes, as of right now, Lenore Sellers is 100% going to be the guy rolling out there as your starter with, when Old Dominion comes to town at the end of August. But again, I think we'd all be very surprised if that changes between now and when that first game kicks off on August 31st. Because there's just, again, hasn't been really any indication of that being a tight competition at this point in time. And, again, the little bit that we saw from Lenore Sellers a season ago, what we saw of him in spring game, you see it. You see what that potential is and why he is the head of the line as of right now and should be going forward as we inch closer and closer to the start of the 2024 season. Now, and I think it was Dow Loggins that talked about this a couple of weeks ago when the question was every single week, anytime Beamer or Loggins or anybody got up there, hey, what's the quarterback competition? When are you going to name a starter? When are you going to name a starter? And all that kind of stuff. And I think it was Dow that talked about the pros and cons of naming a starter or leaving things open-ended. Now, one of the biggest pros is the fact that the guys on your team definitively know who that leader is. Because, of course, quarterback is the most important position on the entire team. And when you know who your play caller, who your signal caller is going to be, who the guy taking the snap every single game or every single offensive, play is for the most part, everybody's going to gravitate towards that guy of being the leader. But at the same time, and Loggins talked about this, guys in the locker room are going to know before everybody else. Guys in the locker room are going to have already had a starter in mind before the coach names one. And I think you saw that in the spring game, just with how Sellers led the offense, what we see from his interactions with teammates, what we hear from his teammates about him. I think it was easy to see that he was already seen as that leader before Beamer said anything about him being the starter. So you're already kind of ahead of schedule on that, even before the announcement was made yesterday. The con, if there is a con, is that, now the opponents know who to prepare for. In this situation, I don't even think that's that big of a negative here because Lenore Sellers has so little tape on him. And, of course, the spring game was as vanilla could be. So you're not looking at that and saying, ooh, here's the nuance of their offense and here's what they're going to try and do special with this guy. Like you really still don't have a lot of tape on Lenore Sellers at the college level outside of a few plays against lesser competition a season ago to really glean from. Now, with being a starter, as you get deeper into your season, more tape will be on him regardless, and your opponents later in the year, your Ole Misses, your Alabamas, your Clemsons, obviously at the end of the year, are going to have a good notebook on him by the time those games roll around. And again, I'm not trying to disrespect Old Dominion or anything like that, but you shouldn't, have to keep your starting quarterback in the dark against a team like Old Dominion to feel comfortable about winning that game. That's a game that South Carolina should not have a problem with. And if you're suddenly in a shootout with Old Dominion in week number 1 with the caliber of talent that this team has, then we got a different discussion coming away from that game, probably more than just issues at quarterback. You know what I mean? So I don't even think that is that big of a con to naming a starter at this point in the month of May. And again, these other teams around the country, other programs that are going to be on South Carolina's schedule, they're not dumb. They could probably see the writing on the wall too and put 2 and 2 together and figure out that, Lenore Sellers was probably going to end up being that guy anyway. So what little preparation, probably no preparation at this point in time in the month of May anyway, was being made of going against Lenore Sellers, was probably already known. And again, you're not really focusing on individuals or individual teams until you get to that week of preparation. So, naming it as of right now doesn't really change anything in the grand scheme of things, in my opinion. So, again, that's our official word from Coach Beamer on that. That now we can put the headlines and officially put it at the top of the depth chart. But again, not really surprising based on what we've seen and what we've heard from the Lenore Sellers through the first couple of weeks of spring practice and obviously the spring game just a couple of weeks ago. And again, it'll be bigger news if that changes between now and when the season starts, if somebody is able to pass him, and I don't expect that to be the case. We'll get into more of what Coach Beamer had to say at the Welcome Home event last night. Also, talked a little bit about the transfer portal and had some interesting comments on, balancing portal recruiting, but obviously still placing a huge emphasis on high school recruiting as well. We'll get to that in just a moment. Quick reminder, as always, baseball season rolls along. Still waiting on that first Grand Slam. Maybe it'll get hit tonight against Winthrop. Pregame coverage starting at 5:45 for a 6 o'clock first pitch up the road in Rock Hill. The Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway continues to roll on. Head online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win if you haven't done already. $1,175 up for grabs in tonight's game, and $25 gets added to the pot each and every game until we see a Gamecock hitter hit a grand slam. Hear more from Beamer coming up. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Tuesday on the game. Oh, it is a busy month for our friends over at Twin Peaks. The entire month of May, in fact, is it's National Hamburger Month. And I don't know about you, but I certainly enjoy a good hamburger. And if you're searching for the best burgers in the game, you can find them at Twin Peaks all month long, National Hamburger Month. And these seasoned, smashed, and seared burgers are waiting to be discovered right down the road with our friends at Twin Peaks down in the Vista. Of course, coming up this Sunday, it is, in fact, Mother's Day. And, all cool moms love the Lodge. Show your appreciation this Mother's Day by treating your mom to specials on some of her favorites all day long, including mimosas, sangrias, and more. There is no better place to hang out, even on Mother's Day, than with our friends over at Twin Peaks down in the Vista. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point here on your Tuesday. Tyler Head along with you. Plenty to get into from Gamecock football. As again, Coach Beamer speaking last night at a welcome home event just up the road in Florence. And it's been a really good offseason as far as the transfer portal goes for South Carolina. They obviously added a lot of guys back in December, have now added a little bit here in the spring with a couple wide receivers, and still the opportunity, as I talked about a few minutes ago, to maybe add one more body to the offensive line room. But even if they don't, I mean, you still feel good about what you have right now. That would just, if nothing else, add more depth more than anything to a room that obviously was decimated by injuries a season ago, so you can never be, too safe on on all that. But even if they don't, you still feel really good about where South Carolina is. And we haven't talked about the transfer portal rankings as of late, but South Carolina is 11th overall in the entire offseason as far as transfer portal ratings go. They were 3 back in December, but obviously with not a ton of portal movement in the month of April and May, that does drop them down a little bit, but still very, very solid. And you feel pretty good about what South Carolina has going into the season, in addition to having a really good high school recruiting class once again. And Beamer's made an act of that from his time here at South Carolina, bringing in really good high school talent. But an interesting question was posed to Coach Beamer last night. This will be cut number 12 here, Dave. With the ever-changing landscape of college football and the ever-changing rules when it comes to the transfer portal, is that ever going to take precedent over high school recruiting? And I thought Beamer's answer here was pretty interesting.
I always want to start with high school recruiting, always. I believe that's how you build your roster, and to me the best teams are the ones that you've brought players in as freshmen, you develop them, and then they're there for their 3rd, 4th, 5th year in the program. You look at some of those guys you're referring to: Rashawn Lee, Ja'Kai Moore, Luke Doty, Tonka Hemingway, Boogie Huntley. TJ Sanders is going into his 4th year in the program. Nicky Manwari, DQ, their 3rd. O'Donnell Fortune, I guess, his 4th. So I talk about it at these events. We've got, I think, 12 players that have been here since 2020, which is really pretty cool, in the portal era. So I always want to start with high school recruiting. I'd love to be able to sign 25 guys a year. You keep them for 4 years and you develop your roster that way. Those guys get to be juniors and seniors. They're older guys and they've been around your program for a while. I don't know if that's as sustainable here as maybe it is at other schools because of, frankly, the size of the state. There's not as many SEC football players coming out of South Carolina every single year than there are Texas, California, Florida, those type places. So you've got to be creative. I don't ever want to say, okay, we're going to sign 20 portal guys a year and that's how we're going to build our roster. I just think it's hard to build a team year to year and sustain it year to year doing that. But we certainly want to be able to have the bulk of our class come from the high school ranks and then being able to supplement it year to year from the portal, whether it be with a Spencer Rattler or the guys at Nick Gargiulo and some of the great guys that we've brought in that we've had success with that we've brought in from the transfer portal. So we'll always utilize it. It's when those guys fit what we're about on and off the field, and they're looking for what we're offering from an opportunity standpoint. But high school recruiting, we haven't put any less importance on that. Our coaches are out recruiting right now and are attacking it, harder than we ever have.
And I think it's a fair question to pose because the rules continue to change when it comes to the transfer portal, and it becomes easier and easier to not only acquire talent, but easier for guys to enter the transfer portal and go elsewhere. And as we know, with recent rule changes, now you essentially have free agency in college football, where outside of the restriction on being able to go from SEC to SEC, it's pretty much free range. You no longer have to worry about sitting out if you transfer a second time as an undergrad. So you can realistically go play 4 years at 4 different schools. And if you don't like your situation, you can just leave after a year and go somewhere else, and so on and so forth until you find where your best fit is, or you find the place that's going to give you more in NIL or whatever it may be. So with that changing, I can understand why a question like that would be posed, but I think Beamer's answer was really good there, that yes, we're going to continue to look into the transfer portal when we need to, but it's going to be to fill the gaps more than it is to, create the roster. And give Coach Beamer credit. He's done a fantastic job when it comes to recruiting at the high school ranks. Probably better than a lot of people think he should be doing. And that's not a knock on South Carolina, but the fact that he's been able to pull in 5 stars in these past couple of classes, like there are major Power 5 schools that aren't doing that. You know what I mean? And that's a tip of the cap to Coach Beamer as well as his staff and their prowess when it comes to recruiting at the high school ranks, to be able to bring in high caliber talent to a school that's still waiting to hopefully ascend to that next level of competition, next level of being in the mix, for the SEC title every single year. You know what I mean? Like, he's getting guys to buy into what the future of this program is going to be and what he is building here at South Carolina. And, if you were a lesser recruiter, maybe you would think, okay, well, maybe we just go the transfer portal route a little heavier. You're never going to abandon high school recruiting. You know what I mean? You always have to bring in, 15 to 20 guys every single year to supplement for guys graduating and all that kind of stuff, in addition to guys leaving in the transfer portal. Like, you're never going to completely abandon high school recruiting, but at the same time, you have to put the emphasis on it. You have to, spend a good section of your time and energy focusing on the high school recruiting, because it's just one thing to go out there and say, all right, well, let's just go get 20 more bodies, Tad. It's another thing to try and go out there and get the high caliber talent that is going to make you successful, hopefully long term. I think the perfect example of the balance of this, in the wrong direction, is Colorado with Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders has been phenomenal in the portal. I mean, he rebuilt his entire team last offseason by shooing away 90% of his roster and supplementing that with, 70, 50, 60, 70 guys in the transfer portal. Rebuilt the entire team. That's not sustainable. And once again this offseason, they brought in 37 guys in the portal. He's killing it right now. And they got the top-rated portal class once again this offseason. But they're 57th in high school recruiting. Now, Deion himself doesn't want to go for in-home visits and sit in, the living room and talk to mom and dad like every other coach in college football does. So that's probably dinging them a little bit. But, and look, I don't think Deion's going to be there for long term anyway. And he's kind of recruiting like it, where he wants to, hey, let me build a winning season and show people that I can do it here at Colorado, and then I'm going to go on to the NFL or something like that, because he's not building for long-term success. You have to have success at the high school ranks as well as the portal ranks to be a good, sustainable program, which, again, South Carolina's doing a good job of both. And hopefully for this season, that translates into being in that 7, 8, 9 win category. Hopefully. If nothing else, just make a bowl game. You know what I mean? Start trending back in the right direction, because unfortunately this past season was a bit of a step back. But as far as off the field, as far as recruiting in both the high school ranks and the portal ranks, Coach Beamer and staff are doing exactly what they need to do, and hopefully that will lead to the long-term success that we're all hoping for here at South Carolina. Reminder, craft beer card is back. Head on over to 1075thegame.com. You can spend $30 brewery at 12 different craft beer locations. It's a $360 value, all yours for just $79. Go to 1075thegame.com, click on the Sweet Deals tab, and purchase yourself a craft beer card. It is Tuesday. That means it is time to tell you who did the heavy lifting. Thanks to our friends over at TEC Equipment Rental. That is coming up next on The Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Tuesday on The Game. You know, I was just talking about Coach Beamer and building a strong foundation when it comes to the South Carolina football program. You also need a strong foundation for your home. And if your home's foundation is showing some signs of issues, you need to get it addressed right away with our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist. What are some foundation issues, you might ask? Well, maybe things like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors or windows that might be a little bit sticky, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you're noticing any of these problems in or around your home, you could have serious foundation issues. You need to check out our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist. Go online to cantycanfixit.com, schedule an appointment. A professional will come out, evaluate your home's foundation, and get you and your family fixed up just right so you can live comfortably in your home going forward. Again, Canty Foundation Specialist, schedule an appointment online at cantycanfixit.com. Welcome back in. Next point, Tyler Head with you here on your Tuesday morning here on the game. South Carolina baseball back in action tonight. Quick turnaround, taking on Winthrop. Again, 6 o'clock first pitch, pregame coverage starting at 5:45 right here on the game is just a quick even quicker turnaround after that before playing Georgia coming up later this week, Thursday through Saturday series out there at Founders Park. Big news yesterday, SEC Baseball Player of the Week going to none other than Cole Messina after his fantastic performance over the weekend against the Missouri Tigers out there on the road. I mean, he seemingly hit every single pitch that came his way, hit for the cycle over the course of the weekend, drove in a lot of runs as well, 7 of 11 from his time at the plate. He, in addition to Ethan Petrie, did quite a bit of heavy lifting, not only for the team this past weekend, but have been doing so for the team this entire year. Their numbers on the weekend combined went 10 of 20 for 10 RBIs and 4 home runs between Ethan Petrie and Cole Messina. And they truly set the tone for this entire lineup when it comes to offensive production. And Coach Kingston yesterday, as he does each and every Monday afternoon, joined Jay and Elijah on the postgame show. And cut number 3 here, Dave, talked a little bit about what both Petrie and Messina do in terms of setting the tone for the rest of the team.
Well, if you want to sum it up, when him and Ethan Petrie are really scoring runs and driving in runs and taking great at-bats, we basically win. I mean, it's that simple. And because everybody else then can complement them and help do things around them. When they are going well, like they are, we win, period. And because everything else is good enough around them. And then when they get in a little bit of a funk, then, that's when we struggle a little bit to score as many runs as we currently are. But Cole's locked in, Ethan's locked in, and my hope is that they're getting locked in at just the right time. Obviously, as a team, you want to finish strongest at the end of the year, and I think we're trending that way. Our offense as a whole now has been really, really good for about the last 2 weeks, I'd say, and we're averaging, I think, 10, 11 runs a game. So hopefully we're trending at the right time, and when all is said and done, we want to put it together when it matters most.
And that's absolutely the case. And when you look at what Messina and Petrie have been able to do so far this season, just looking specifically in SEC play, the numbers back up exactly what Coach Kingston is talking about there, that when Messina and Petrie are on, the rest of the team usually follows suit and usually end up winning the series. As I mentioned, 10 of 20 at the plate this past weekend against Missouri with 10 RBIs. Kentucky, just a couple weeks ago, combined 6 of 21 at the plate with 6 RBIs. Florida series, that you also won 10 of 26 at the plate, 9 RBIs, 2 home runs. The Vandy series, where you swept the Commodores, combined 8 of 20 at the plate, 10 RBIs and 3 home runs. So, again, these great weekend series usually end up leading to overall series victories for South Carolina when your 2 best players, and again, these guys were preseason All-Americans. You knew, that they were expected to be your 2 best players during the season, and the rest of the team seems to certainly follow suit. On the flip side of things, when they struggle at the plate, it usually translates to a losing weekend. Arkansas combined 3 of 23 at the plate for 3 RBIs. Cole Messina missed 2 games against Texas A&M. South Carolina ends up losing one of those games, coming back on Sunday to win the other game that Cole Messina was out there. The Ole Miss series to start the year, 2 of 23. Remember, that was the series where Cole Messina did not get a single hit and struck out a bunch. 0 RBIs combined between those 2 guys there. And the only real outlier is Alabama, where they combined to go 8 of 22 for 7 RBIs and 1 home run. That was the only series where you had a high level of production out of Cole Messina and Ethan Petrie, and the team did not win the series itself. So again, look at the numbers, and it all goes back to when your 2 best players are playing their best and giving you production on offense, then you're probably winning. And I can't think of 2 guys going to be more important this weekend against Georgia, next weekend against Tennessee, than Cole Messina and Ethan Petrie. Making sure those guys are getting their hits, making sure those guys are getting on base, and the rest of the team following suit in regards to that. And as he said, he feels like those guys are hitting up at the right time. And they absolutely are. And this team will go as far as those 2 guys lead them to take it. Because, again, you're going to need to score runs against high-powered offenses like Georgia and Tennessee. Whoever you get in the SEC tournament and whoever you end up drawing in the, in the postseason, whether that be in a regional, super regional, whatever it may be. You got to score runs. And these two guys are the catalyst to this team scoring a lot of runs. And looking at this upcoming weekend series against Georgia, you're taking on a staff that isn't all that great. 5.31 staff ERA, which is 91st in the country. They're going to give you opportunities to hit the ball, going to give you opportunities to get on base, going to give you opportunities to score runs. You've got to take advantage of that when it's all said and done. And again, we're going to be focused keenly on what Messina and Petrie are doing, and hopefully the rest of the team can follow suit with their success. And you're getting a production throughout the entire lineup right now, which is a must and a key to hopefully success as you run through the postseason as well. Obviously, Brindling doing a fantastic job in your leadoff spot. This past weekend wasn't the best for him, but his production up to this point has been really, really good. You're getting, good run from Blake Jackson in the middle of your lineup. Dalton Reeves, Lee Croy, Cass is hitting the ball. Like you're just getting solid up and down on your entire, 1 through 9. And again, that will hopefully translate to more offensive success over these next couple series to help you close out the regular season strong and get you into a good spot with the postseason here coming up in a couple of weeks. And the projections are hard to ignore, to say the least, because, and especially in baseball, where you have experts and committees and stuff like that that are determining your fate in where you go, who you draw, and all that kind of stuff. It's really hard to block out that noise and just not pay attention to it at all. As we wrap up hour number 1 in the Extra Point, we'll hear a little bit from Coach Kingston about trying to block out that noise and just focus on the task at hand, as well as preview tonight's matchup taking on Winthrop up the road in Rock Hill. That is coming up. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Tuesday on the Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head with you. A couple more minutes flying solo here. Guard Trust Hour coming up at 10 o'clock. Excited to have another guest from Gamecocks football in here. Jared Brown, transfer wide receiver from Coastal Carolina, going to be sitting in here with me and Chris for the next hour. Of course, Demetrius Knight was in here last Thursday. I wasn't here for that conversation, but everything that I heard and got to listen to sounded really good, and very excited to hear from Jared Brown, again, coming up here in just a couple of minutes. South Carolina baseball taking on Winthrop tonight. As I mentioned, 6 o'clock first pitch. Pregame coverage starting at 5:45 up the road in Rock Hill as Carolina wraps up their midweek slate before taking on two of their tougher opponents in all of SEC play in Georgia and Tennessee, starting later on this week with the Bulldogs coming to town out here at Founders Park. And yesterday on the postgame show, don't really get to break a whole lot of news, Jay and Elijah do, but Coach Kingston, cut number 6 here, Dave, named the starter for tonight against Winthrop.
I'll go ahead. And I don't think I've ever told you who the starting pitcher is going to be for the midweek game, but I'll break that precedent just for you today, Jay. We're going to go with Pitzer, and, it'll probably be a game where we go Johnny Holstaff, but Tyler Pitzer will be the first one to pitch tomorrow night.
So Pitzer getting the start tonight, first start in a while. If you remember back, he had worked his way into the starting lineup early on in SEC play, started 3 straight series against Vanderbilt, Alabama, and Texas A&M. Had that really great outing against Vanderbilt that we thought at the time maybe was going to lock him in to the rotation on the weekend for the year. Of course, that went a little bit sideways the next time out against Alabama, and then A&M was another rough showing, so ended up being back in the bullpen, and the weekend rotation's kind of gone around circles since then a little bit, and may change for this upcoming weekend against Georgia as well, but Pitts are getting the opportunity to start in the midweek for the first time since the Citadel a couple of weeks ago. Of course, Eddie Copper was the normal midweek starter, or was going to be for the course of the entire season until he suffered that injury a couple of weeks back. So Pitts getting the start. Good performance out of him this past weekend, coming out of the bullpen against Missouri. Went 2 1/3 innings on Saturday, only giving up 1 hit and 1 run with 5 strikeouts. So Pitzer, a guy who's a true freshman, somebody that you're certainly looking at as one of your future key guys, in this pitching staff, and maybe he'll be a weekend, maybe he'll be a rotation guy, maybe he'll be somebody that continues to come out of the bullpen, but getting work in multiple different areas, including tonight with the starting role. It's going to be a whole staff, as Coach Kingston mentioned, as midweeks typically do, end up becoming, and obviously, hopefully, you don't have to use anybody for too long and keep everybody's arms fresh for the quick turnaround that is going to be, the Georgia series coming up a little bit later on in the week. I wanted to get to this as well. And look, this is, by the way, this is a Winthrop team that you run-rolled earlier on in the season. Hopefully this is a game that you get in and get out of pretty quickly, much like last week's game, where you don't have to worry about, playing a long, drudging game of 9 innings or anything like that. Hopefully you can get out pretty quickly, nobody gets hurt, and you get set for Georgia coming up later on in the week. Coach Kingston also talked about his team not paying attention to the outside noise, not paying attention to the projections and things like that, of where this team might be in the postseason and all that kind of stuff, and trying to focus on the task at hand. Cut number 4 here, Dave.
Well, one of the funniest moments I've had this year, and I shared it with my wife. We were watching one of the post-game press conferences with Ethan Petrie, and the question was asked about Quad 1 wins and how important they are. And Ethan calmly answered the question and then finished with, but I don't really know what Quad 1 means. So I think that kind of tells you how the players look at everything. The players go out to have a next great at bat and have a next great inning. And getting to host is a byproduct of playing games well and winning enough games. So you can't really say, well, if we do this, we'll host, so let's just snap our fingers. That's just not how it works. You've got to go, we've got to try to win the next game. And how do we win the next game? We've got to decide who to pitch and who to play. And is it going to be a game where we steal bases, or are we going to rely on power? Like, those are the decisions and the conversations we have to have, because our job is to win the next game. And if you do that enough, if you stack enough of those, then getting the host happens as a result. And so the hosting stuff, all that's great conversation on the radio. But for a baseball team, we just have to try to make sure we're prepared to win the next game.
And I get that. That's the right thing to say. Don't pay attention to the outside noise. Focus on the next game and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's hard to ignore where South Carolina sits as of right now. The latest projections for D1 baseball coming off of this weekend series against Missouri. And look, you beat a Missouri team that was bad. Beating them doesn't really raise you necessarily in the projections of your seed or anything like that. Losing would have obviously hurt you a little bit, but Carolina projected to stay right at a 10 seed as they were coming into the weekend against Missouri. And that's an interesting spot because if you were, 13th or 14th with 2 weeks to go in the regular season, then yes, obviously you have the opportunity to climb up higher in your seeding, but you're still would have the potential, if you won your regional, to go on the road in a super regardless, if you are seeded 9th through 16th. But being 10th is interesting because you're taking on a highly ranked Georgia team. You're taking on the best team in the country right now in Tennessee coming up next weekend. That carrot of being a top 8 seed is still right in front of you. It's dangling. If you handle your business these next 2 weekends, you could be one of those coveted top 8 seeds. And I don't even say that from the standpoint of winning both series. Now, you would love to win both series. That'd be fantastic. And that would certainly get you into that top 8 seed. But if you take 2 out of 3 against Georgia this weekend and you get at least 1 against Tennessee next weekend, I think that would still be enough to get you into that top 8. Now, it also depends on what other teams are doing and stuff like that, but you handle your business that way, you split these next 6 games in the SEC play to round out the regular season, I think that might just be enough to get you into that top 8. It would get you over the 500 threshold as far as conference play, as the team is 13-11 right now. That would get you to 16-14, which, again, you get over 500 in the SEC play, you've done something. I think that might be just enough to get you to where you want to be as far as that national seeding goes. And, of course, that means you're hosting a regional. And that means if you win your regional, you're still hosting in a super regional as well. And not trying to get too far ahead, but that's a big deal. And, would the series have gone differently against Florida last year if you were hosting instead of going on the road to Gainesville? Maybe, because those were tight games. That would be a big accomplishment, putting yourself in position to potentially host all the way through earning a seed to Omaha. So we'll see what happens. Again, you got to handle your business tonight. Beating Winthrop doesn't raise your stock necessarily, but if nothing else, keeps your momentum going on what's been a good run these past couple of weeks for South Carolina baseball as you head into a very tough series later on this week against Georgia. And again, it's a quick turnaround. You play tonight, and then you play 2 days from now on Thursday. Play your Thursday through Saturday series. So, no time to dilly-dally. Hopefully, take care of business tonight. Get back here, keep everybody healthy, get everybody rested, and get set for the tough series against the Bulldogs. And coming up on Thursday night, running through Saturday. That'll do it for today's edition of The Extra Point. Coming up next, it is the Garnet Trust Hour. Myself and Chris Clark will be chatting with one of the new transfers to South Carolina football, that being Jared Brown, coming over from Coastal Carolina, and we'll expect to be one of the big contributors in the wide receiver room this upcoming season. That's all coming up next in the 10 o'clock hour here on, this has been The Extra Point. Coming up next, the Garnet Trust Hour, right here on The Game.
Button's on and this is on, that means your microphone is live.